when we try anything new, there is this piece of vulnerability. One, am I doing it right? Two, the judgment of others.
In my opinion, you only feel vulnerable because a situation has put you in a position to feel vulnerable.
If you allow it in, you're actually making a choice. You're making a choice to allow it for you to feel vulnerable. You're allowing that.
If someone's got a picture of you, Joe, naked with pig ears on, and they
I don't know if I understand where this is going.
InspirationNation, hello, it's me, Ryan Boniface, back with another week on the podcast. As you can tell, if you're a frequent listener or if you're haven't been around for a little while, Lee is not here. We have sacked him. He is no longer part of the podcast. No, I'm joking. He's not. He's just on holiday this week. He, I believe, is on a little island just off the coast of Italy, I think. Can't remember the name of the island, but it's down near. It's on the same island as Cagliari, I think. I did have a little look on Google Maps when I saw on social media where he was. But he is off gallivanting as per usual because he has about 20 episodes off a year doing other extracurricular activities. Bless him. So it's this, the guardians of the podcast, Joe and I, here again. Thank you very much for joining us. We are here every week, albeit with or without Lee sometimes. Usually live on TikTok or other social medias. We'll let you know about anytime between about 5:30 and 6 o'clock. So come check us out live and ask us some questions or say hi if you pop through. You can keep up to date with us on social media at Listen TOIN, and that's on Twitter, Instagram, I believe, maybe Facebook. Facebook may be the Inspiration Nation podcast. I'm not very good at this introductory stuff. Lee usually does it. Just type us in, you'll find us. And if you're listening to us on your podcast providers, then please, as most podcasts do, just drop us a review. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the podcast. Hopefully the more stars, the better. Joined by my good friend and esteemed colleague, Joe Noya, this week. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Ryan. All good. It's been good. So I've I've got a little bit of holiday myself, but I'm not going anywhere. Doing a staycation in the UK. So enjoying it very much. Thanks for everyone. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Busy week. Easter week is a shorter week, and then obviously next week's also a shorter week. So having to cram 10 days worth of work into what is 8 days. But other than that, I think everyone feels a bit of a pinch around whilst bank holidays and stuff are nice. People do definitely feel a pinch of having to pick up more work in a shorter pace of time, and that's no different to where I am at the minute, really. Yeah, definitely. Brilliant. We have if you're slightly newer to the show, we have a round robin system where out of the three of us, one of us will have a subject each week, and it is Joe's turn this week, as it was mine last week, and again, Lee is off on holiday. He could have, Zoom's a worldwide feature. He could have pitched in. He probably could have been here. But yeah, hey, look, I don't want to dig him out anymore. So Joe, your subject this week. What are we talking about?
Yeah, so welcome TikTok. I just want to say that welcome. Can see Tomsky 777 joined, so thank you for that. So click on to TikTok, ask questions of that as we go through the podcast today. Love that, and thank you, Ryan, for such a great intro. So today we're talking about vulnerability. This is what I want to talk about. Now, I've got a couple of quotes I want to read out, and there was one by Theodore Roosevelt I want to read. So we're going to read this out because and I want to talk about it a little bit afterwards. So. And I've got a couple to read, but this one is called The Person in the Arena. And it says, it's not the critic who counts, not the person who points out how the strong person stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the person who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dusts and sweat and blood, who strives vainly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends themselves in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst if they fail, at least fails while daring greatly, so that their place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. And the reason I talk about this is, this is quite an inspiring piece, and I've got a little bit more, and I hope you guys on TikTok are enjoying this, is that when we try anything new, there is this piece of vulnerability. One, am I doing it right? Two, the judgment of others, and I think Lee talked about it before. And so I really want to talk about whether, being vulnerable, in my view, is, in my view, I think it's a strength. It's something, if we can be authentic in that space, I think it can produce a lot of good things, but it can be quite painful, as that quote from Theodore Roosevelt said. You'll be trying something new, someone criticizes you, you're trying something that you may not be, you may not be 100% at, because you're just trying it out, you're just doing things. And this is what I found when I started doing YouTube, and we've encountered a few of it ourselves, right, haven't we? We've had a few people come in and criticize us and stuff like that. And I want to just explore it, whether, although we've had that, we've been vulnerable. Sometimes we don't, once we're honest, we don't really know. And I think the important thing is to keep trying. And I think for me, being vulnerable, saying I don't know, or saying that actually I've not got it all figured out, is actually something that's quite a strength. I know definitely when I'm training or anything like that, that if I don't know the answer to something, that if I say, do you know what, I don't know the answer to that, it's actually more authentic, it's more being more vulnerable. So I just wanted to give you guys on TikTok, Ryan, what are your views on vulnerability, and do you think it's a strength, or do you think it's something else?
I don't agree that I think it's a strength, but I think that's just where our personalities probably differ, because I can see, to your credit, why you think that. A lot of emotions and a lot of how do you perceive things are subjective, because they're based on how you see things, right? There's no book that writes these things down and says, if you feel vulnerability, this is a positive thing, or this is a negative thing, or anything along those lines. However, my own perception, and this might be for a manner of different reasons, I can probably think of a few in my own head, but I don't see vulnerability as being a strength in most situations. There are some where it will benefit you. In the same way, there are some situations where potentially being aggressive will benefit you, or being loving will benefit you, or being happy, or jokingly, or it's not really an adjective, but you know what I mean. There's pretty much, there's a lot of examples where every emotion is of a benefit to you. I don't think it's a weakness, though. I think to make that clear, I think vulnerability is what it is. You're vulnerable both to the positive aspects and potentially negative ones, and that that it just is for me. It isn't. I don't see it as a strength. I don't see it as a weakness. I don't see it as a positive. I don't see it as a negative. Vulnerability just is for me. Whereas by comparison, I see confidence as only ever being a positive attribute. It's not a case that I'm kind of saying no emotions are a positive aspect, because I do think that there's some that are, but vulnerability for me isn't on that list. Bit of a long-winded way of saying I disagree with you, I think, but I respect why you think that way.
Yeah, and I think it's the whole thing about where I'm coming from with it is whether being genuine, I suppose, being authentic, because sometimes have we got it all figured out? No. If you haven't got the answer to something, is it okay to say, do you know what, I don't know? In fact, it was one of these, I don't know if we said it on the podcast before, where Elon Musk said, I think it was talking about AI. He said, well, what do you think? How do you think you stop it? How could you stop AI? And he goes, well, I don't know. And for me, I thought that was just very authentic and quite vulnerable, because people looked at Elon as the person who's the tech person, who's got all the good resources and stuff like that. And he said, I don't know. And for me, if someone's being vulnerable, I think it comes across as they don't have all the answers. And I think it's almost for me the human condition that actually being vulnerable is actually where we grow. and I'm going to go back to, my mum passed away. I'm going to go back to when I had my depression, and I was super vulnerable back then, super vulnerable. But from that vulnerability, actually, it was hard, and people can take advantage of it. And I think maybe that's where you're coming from, maybe perhaps. But I think going through it and actually being honest about where you sit and where you are at the moment is such a powerful thing, because I think it's just very genuine. And I think the whole thing is, I suppose what I'm trying to get at is that if we don't know, aren't vulnerable. We don't. You try and sort of. I've heard that thing, blag it, which I don't really do it at all. I think that's where it comes back as that. It's not very genuine, and it's almost like attacks the character. And so that's where I'm coming from with it. But I know what you're saying. Confidence is, or you can be confident, but there's that other thing of confidence. You can be confident, but there's a very fine line between super confidence and arrogance. There's always these like dichotomies that happen. And thanks for TikTok for the love. I really appreciate it. Thank you for that. Yeah, and I think that's the really important thing. But yeah, I see what I can see your point, that you think you can see it can be something that's difficult to see, but also it is that you don't see it as a strength, and I totally appreciate that, because I think this is the whole point of discussion is how do we if we're feeling vulnerable, how do we use it to our advantage? I think that's probably what I'm going with this. And I think there's plenty of times when I felt vulnerable, but I've been honest, and I've said, well, I don't really know, but what I will do is I'll go find out, I'll go and do something, I'll take some action around that. With the passing of my mum, and being depressed, I said, right, okay, what do I need to do to get myself in that situation, but I don't feel it's in the right place? So being honest on this podcast, for instance, I think is being vulnerable. Being honest about the things that we do, things that we don't always succeed, but that's what I think this whole Theodore Roosevelt quote was from. And I want to sort of quote something a bit later from Brene Brown. And I don't know you guys out there that have heard of Brene Brown, but she's very inspiring. But I want to read something out, and I want to get your take on that. But based on what I've just said, what are your thoughts on that, and what are your thoughts on how we can take this forward? And I suppose if we are feeling vulnerable, how can we move forward from that?
Experience of situation. In my opinion, you only feel vulnerable because a situation has put you in a position to feel vulnerable, right? You don't wake up, cook eggs for breakfast, and feel vulnerable that the eggs are going to eat you rather than you eating the eggs, right? It doesn't work that way. Life is
that's a good way. I love that. Right?
You're only going to feel vulnerable if somebody or a situation makes you feel that way. And in the same way that embarrassment exists, I think vulnerability exists. If you take the embarrassment away, and you take the vulnerability away from the person holding that against you, then you can't be vulnerable and you can't be embarrassed. If someone's got a picture of you, Joe, naked with pig ears on, and they threaten to leak it. I
don't know if I understand where this is going.
And they threaten to leak it to, I don't know, the public or whatever. Yeah. You take that embarrassment away from them and you leak it yourself, which I accept is not something you're going to want to do. But you take that power away from them, then that embarrassment goes, right? Because you're in control. And it works for me. It works the same with vulnerability. If you're in a situation where you think you're going to be vulnerable, you think you're going to be susceptible to issues or criticism or problems down the line, and you take that away and you take control of that by either finding a solution to the problem or understanding and breaking down how these things are going to work in any way they can, then you take that vulnerability away. So I think it works under the same premise for me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, I think that's quite nice if you know when it's going to come up. I definitely think preparation. I definitely think going to find things out, taking some action on things you can control. And I suppose the other thing I'm talking about is actually when you're not maybe that prepared and it happens in the moment, and that's where it's like difficult. It's like, oh, what do I do now? And I think there's that piece there. But yeah, I totally agree. Like if you can prepare for it, then do it. If you know that you're going to do something and you think there could be a little bit in there that I could be vulnerable, then you like release it, like you said, you own up to it, you attack it. I think you're absolutely right. I think preparation is absolutely key on that. So no, I don't disagree with you there. I think that is a real good tip for anybody who's going to do something. I mean, like this, for instance, when we do this podcast, right, we don't really know. This is what I like about this podcast. I feel this podcast, we're quite vulnerable in the podcast. And when we talk about something, we don't really know where it's going to go. I didn't know where the conversation was going to go. Sometimes, we come up, don't we? We talk about subjects, but we don't really know it's going to go. But that's good. And before, I remember we talked about this, and I talked about it to Lee and yourself, that I used to write out loads of structure because I was trying to prepare for that, almost like you're talking about, preparing, making sure that things are. But actually, when we did that, we don't actually know where this conversation is going. So you might say something, oh, well, I don't really know the answer to that, but that's okay. And that's what I love about it, because I think vulnerability, where you don't really know, but you push through and you just go through with it, and you go, well, I didn't know that, but tell me more about it. Or we pick up something from you, Ryan, or Lee, and you go, oh, I didn't know about that. Tell me more about it. You then are vulnerable because you didn't know, because you might feel that actually I don't have knowledge, or I just feel a little bit out of it. But actually, I'm going to learn something here. And I think the learning piece around that is quite good as well. I think, so there's a lot of things or advantage you can pick up from vulnerability. Like say, Ryan, you're expert on, gaming and all that sort of stuff. And I think even when there was one about aging was really good. And there's some really good points you brought up about stuff. And I think there's some really good pieces in there. And I think in those sort of moments, that's where we get the knowledge. That's where we're open to learning. And I think where we say we don't know and we're open to learning, where we think if we think we don't know and we're not open to learn, that's where I think it becomes, like you said, it paralyzes you, it stops you growing. But if you can embrace it, like you must say, embrace it, prepare and say, I'm going to go with it, then I think that's where it can be a real big strength. But yeah, I know I explained quite a bit there, but yeah, I think talking about it now, it's some really good thought actions in terms of how we can approach it in a way that really helpful to us. So you go on TikTok, or if you're doing a podcast, and if you are doing your own thing, go launch it, right? And what Theodore was talking about is, if you're in the arena, you're going to take knocks, you're going to get a bit beaten up sometimes, but it's almost like that hoodie that we put together, wasn't it? How life's going to punch you in the face, and how you respond. I mean, it's the hoodie. And I think that's a big thing, because we've all had things that have happened, and it's really difficult. And in fact, I'm reading this book at a minute called, I think it's gone back, I don't know if it's back, but it's called 12 Rules for Life, Jordan Peterson. And it's really good, because in there it talks about the antidote to chaos, because life can seem quite chaotic. It can go well sometimes, and you go, oh, it's a nice little string, suddenly bang, something come in, and then you might be vulnerable. And how do you respond to that? And in a minute, I'm reading that, and there's some quite good things in there. But there, anything come out of that, you, Ron, before I read my next bit, before I read it? Anything that's come out of that for you?
No, I think I've kind of probably touched on everything that I wanted to there.
Okay, I just wanted to read this, because this next bit is from Brene Brown, and she was inspired, I think, by Theodore Roosevelt. And I'm just going to read it, because again, I would like your thoughts on it, Ryan. I think I'd like your thoughts on it. And she said, if you're not in the arena you're getting your ass kicked on occasion, I am not interested in or open to your feedback. There are a million cheap seats in the world today filled with people who will never be brave with their own lives, but will spend every ounce of energy they have hurling advice and judgment at those of us trying to dare greatly. Their only contributions are criticism, cynicism, and fear-mongering. If you're criticizing from a place where you're not also putting yourself on the line, I'm not interested in your feedback. And the reason I love that is because when you do things like we're doing, and we had it, didn't we, where you're doing things like this, you do get negativity. You do get it. And what I loved about that was that if you're not doing it, then I'm not interested. If you're not doing it, putting yourself on the line, who are you to be able to say anything? Because you're not putting yourself on the line. You're just sitting in the safe seats. And I love that. Well, that's so powerful. And so for me, it's like, when we're going about life and someone's offering up their criticism, I think we need to take a step and go, okay, one, who is this person? One, are they qualified? Have they got the experience? Because there's a bit of a quote from Ray Dalio about weighted advice. Yeah. Are they good at what they do? Are they really good? If they are, then you probably need to listen to them a little bit, because if they're doing it. But the second thing is I think, is if they're not doing it and they're just criticizing, or they're just doing it, but they're not actually in doing the work, then who are they to tell you what's going right and what's going wrong? And I think that for me, like we're doing this podcast and we're doing these things, we're trying to help people with their everyday stuff. And we're just three guys being vulnerable, being open about actually our weaknesses and, you know, things we need to work on. And there's people going there going, do you know what, you're not very good. You're not going to go anywhere. We had those people criticizing and like, you know, that's where we can just detach and go, well, you're not doing it. Let's see your podcast. Let's see you put yourself on the line.
Yeah.
No, you're not doing it. Anyway, I just throw quite a lot at you there, Ryan. What are your thoughts on any of that lot?
I think everyone's captain hindsight.
Yeah.
Especially if they're not doing something. I think it's easy to criticize again when you're not doing it. But you know, I think everyone is guilty of it. I think that's also fair. Everyone is guilty of that criticization, the criticizing of other people without knowing kind of what it is they do or how they do it or anything along those lines, really. So I think it's just being aware that providing constructive feedback is a lot different than digging people out for what they do. And you know, a lot of time people get those things confused, and they will just say and do what they want to do, right? And you know, that's at their discretion. But you know, you provide the best support and help for the people around you by being genuine and giving people what they need, you know. So yeah, that's kind of where I sit with it.
Yeah, and go on. You're going to say something.
I'm going to say, I assume you're, you know, from what you said, you're somewhat similar as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, because the thing is that intention we talked about before, isn't it? If we want to help people, right? That's what we do the podcast for. We want to help people, and people can, you know, we want people to like benefit from what we probably don't do right until we reflect and we go, yeah, it didn't go so right. And like you said, captain hindsight, right? We all go through these things and. You know, you're always going to get those people, aren't you? I think you're always going to get those people that are going to criticise, maybe from the sidelines. And I just want to put this out there to people who may be following their passions, following things they want to do, and want to be excited about what they want to do. And they feel a little bit, maybe they're going to feel like they're going to feel a little bit judged. And maybe there's going to be people close to them. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can have people with captain hindsight close to you, and they may be even family members who maybe just don't, you know, sometimes they have the best interest, but maybe it's something that sometimes they may be the ones that are holding you back.
Yeah,
it can be, but sometimes it could be in the best interest. I think you just have to weigh that up. But again, if we're doing it with the best intention, then that's the key. What we don't want to see is we don't want to see people getting harmed just because, you know, they're taking a wrong turn. But we've got to let people follow their passions. I find it's quite difficult with my daughters. My daughters are pursuing their passions. One of my daughters doing psychology, which is fantastic. One of my daughters following her music. And I really want to encourage that. And there's sometimes you just have to let them go, and you have to sort of, you know, you're a dad or a brother or a sister or even a good friend. And I think you need to encourage people, not to the way they are, you know, going to lead themselves into doom. But we do have to fall. Sometimes we have to fall to rise up again. But there are people that will just try and destroy your dreams. And that's when you can feel most vulnerable. You think, is this right? Is this something we should be doing? And for me, that's where the power is with this particular quote that I've said to you. You know, if these people that, you know, haven't done these things themselves, then who are they to say, don't go do that? Look at the people who... Go on, you're going to say something, Ron.
No, I'm going to say, no, I agree.
Yeah. Go look at the people who've done it. Go seek them out. Go get their advice, because their advice is going to be the one that's doing it. I mean, you know, for us, I've working with Mark Drager, who's done the podcast, stuff like that. There's some good things that have come out of it. We've learned a lot on our journey, and we hope you have too. You know, and I say that's really where I'm coming from with it. And I just want people to follow through on what they want to do. And as Jordan Peterson talks about, life is short, and it's something that, you know, life can be chaotic, and you know, what can we do to make the best of it, essentially? What do you want to do? So I think being vulnerable is going to be part of the course of life, but how we deal with it is important. Use it to advantage, use it as a strength. You know, don't let people take advantage of you, and don't listen to the naysayers, because If you want to do something, go find someone who's done it, look at their story, and there'll be tons of clues in there as to how they did it. And that's what you want to be doing. So I really, that's my final word on that. And I just want to sort of throw it over to Ryan. Have you got any final thoughts on this at all, Ryan?
Not many, I don't think. I think just being honest with yourself, and as I said earlier, trying to take the power away from people that kind of want to put you in a vulnerable position is, really important for you in terms of bettering yourself, really. No one has that. No one has the control over you that you don't want them to, or at least they shouldn't. You're fully in control of bettering that and improving that situation. So why not?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point you raised. Actually, if you allow it in, you're actually making a choice. You're making a choice to allow it for you to feel vulnerable. You're allowing that to happen. Although it's difficult sometimes, you are choosing. And I think if you can be aware of that, then you can change the mindset and go, hey, I'm doing my best, and I'm not going to take that because this is something I want to do. This is something I'm choosing to do. So you can choose, I'm not going to allow that person to have that effect on me. And again, it's about the people you surround yourself with. We've had in the podcast as well. So no, Ryan, I really like that. So if you're going to take away, so Ryan, one big thing, from this conversation, what's your big takeaway, would you say, from today?
I think we've pretty much just spoken about it, mate, to be honest. I think not allowing people to have that power over you is the most important way to kind of beat that vulnerability that people often feel.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. And my big takeaway, go back to Brene's quote, is that if people aren't in the arena with you and they're criticizing something you're trying to do something great, they're not doing the same thing or not putting themselves online, then who are they to make you feel vulnerable or criticize you? So that's my takeaway. But yeah, love that. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Ryan. Really enjoyed that.
I'll take a couple of minutes to push some of our outlets that we use. If you type in Jose Noya-Inspiration into Google, all of Joe's websites, blogs that forms part of the website, social media will all appear. So if you want any more of us, that's where you go to. Directly on Twitter and Instagram, it's at listen2in, listen TOIN, and we're on there. Lee's on there. If you have any questions or you want to interact with us, by all means, hop on to the social media and come say hello. Joe has a newsletter which forms part of his website, where you get updates from him once a week, twice a week, once a week.
Yeah, it depends when the video is released. So you get that as the videos get released, you'll get the newsletter. So yes, you also get a link to the new video that's going up as well. So that's always good. Yeah. Yeah,
we're also on YouTube, InspirationNation, Jose Noya as well. So, if you want to watch these podcasts rather than listen to them, we appear on there. Joe often also releases some other videos as time goes by. So feel free to check us out on there. And I think that's pretty much it from me. Anything final from you, Joe?
I just want to say a massive thank you to TikTok. We've got some great likes tonight. Really enjoy it. And also don't forget TikTok, please, or anybody on social media, please just send in what you want to talk about. You can also be the other person of the podcast. Just send us a subject. What do you want us to talk about? We'll talk about it. And that that would also add to that. So what do you want us to be talking about? What's our personal perspective on whatever the challenge you're maybe going through in a minute? This is a personal development podcast to be inspired to what you do. So tell us what you want, tell us what you need, and we will talk about that. So yes, I want to add that because it'd be great.
Yeah, nicely done. Thank you very much for joining us today. We will be back next week, same time, same place, probably with 3 of us next week rather than 2, I would have thought. I hope Lee is enjoying his holiday in all seriousness. And I'm not jealous. Excuse me, I'm not jealous in the slightest.
Enjoy it.
Yes. Don't enjoy it too much that you don't come back though.
Come back.
But yes, thank you very much. And I think all that's left for me to do is count us down. So 3, 2, 1. Inspiration Nation. We'll catch you guys later.
So I want to know now, what's your biggest takeaway? Don't forget to hashtag it with Inspiration Nation in the comments below and make sure you commit to action. Thank you for checking it out. So don't forget to catch all our other Inspiration Nation podcast episodes right over here. So So go check them out. Also, don't forget to subscribe, because that will tell you when your next video goes live by you hitting that amazing bell. So until next time, it's Inspiration Nation, and I'll see you right over there.